the 40,000 level is major. If that breaks, you go down to 30,000. And then if 30,000 doesn't hold, you should go down to 20 relatively quickly. If you look back at past cycles and you look back at 2017, it took about a year or so for Bitcoin to bottom out and put in the lows. And then it chopped around those lows for another year or so.
Let's start with your comments on Bitcoin, because the last time we spoke, you said, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes back down to 20,000. Where do you stand today?
Yeah, I'm still in that camp. I still think that you can already see the inner workings of the weakness in cryptocurrency showing themselves, right? So if you look at the stock market, we've seen a general light correction in the stock market, nothing major yet, but you're down 7 to 10% on the equity markets, and you have Bitcoin down over 30% from its high. So you can see how if the equity markets continue to correct, which I do expect them to do, the deleveraging of the overall system will take Bitcoin down much, much lower. And again, going back to the .coms back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the cryptocurrency area is so similar to that. And remember, when Amazon came out of that period, it was a $5 stock after the .com crash. Look at where it is now. So, I envision Bitcoin almost kind of like that performance of Amazon, where it's going to get smoked. But if you buy it at these lows that you should see within a year or so, you could be it's a major opportunity.
I love how you explained that on the last episode. And for the folks who maybe missed that one, if you could go over that again, because what is it about the DNA of Bitcoin that mimics the stock, price action of companies like Amazon? Why are they similar?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because if you look at it, it's like e-commerce versus blockchain and Bitcoin doesn't seem to be similar, but in reality, look at what was going on in the late 90s. You had the emergence of the internet where everyone was starting to log on. It was this brand new technology. It was kind of changed the world, and everyone was saying it's going to change the world. And here you have blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and everyone's saying, this is brand new technology. It's going to change the world, and that creates this hype, and it created it with the .coms, where people just rushed in. They paid any price because they thought it was going to change the world, which it did, but there's always a value to that, right? And so with blockchain and cryptocurrency, same thing has happened. Everyone has rushed in. They've kind of overinflated it to a big bubble, and now you have to have that washout moment before it can kind of rise like the phoenix from the ash. So in general, I'm focusing mainly on technicals, but I do use a portion of psychology in my trading. So one of the things, when we were trading at the 68, 69,000 highs, one of the things that made me very nervous about that, and everyone was saying, oh, it's a breakout, we took out the April 2021 highs, was that you had way too much hype going on in the small investor realm. And you also had the ETF, right, for Bitcoin just launching at that exact time. It was on the futures, right? And if you go back to 2017, you had the launch of the futures themselves on Bitcoin, and that was also the high back in 2017. So you can almost coordinate these things kind of like astrology, right? But in many ways, it lines up. The hype was too much. And I just want to, I just got to rebut a little bit on the technical analysis side. Let's look at Bitcoin right now, right? So Bitcoin, it looks arbitrary. It's hovering around 40,000. Is this a level? Is it not? I want to just show you guys a couple cool trend lines. Basically, you take a trend line here, you connect it from the beginning of the move up that led us into the April highs. You connect it to this lowest point, and look at where Bitcoin is hovering right now. In addition, when you had the big rollover here in April and May of 2021, and you started to get bounces, all the bounces went right up to 40,000 here. And if you take that line across, it gives you right here. So again, notice how you dipped down here, you bounced up, then you came back down up to 40,000, down and then up, and then finally you broke out before retracing to that same level. So again, just in terms of technicals, what I love about technicals is they don't care if what asset class it is, right? It's all about humans are trading stocks, they're trading commodities, they're trading cryptocurrencies, and we are ruled by emotion, right? Greed and fear is what drives you to either buy or sell. And therefore charts should be universal amongst anything out there.
Okay, so if you could just pull up that chart again, Gareth, because that's what I love about having you on the show. You bring the chart in your fabulous chair. Do you have any indication now of when that 20,000 level would be reached?
Yeah, so the only indication I have, and initially there was kind of a head and shoulders pattern. I'm not loving that as much anymore. But the one thing I am going to watch for is break points, right? So the 40,000 level is major. If that breaks, you go down to 30,000. And then if 30,000 doesn't hold, you should go down to 20 relatively quickly. If you look back at past cycles and you look back at 2017, it took about a year or so for Bitcoin to bottom out and put in the lows. And then it chopped around those lows for another year or so. So I think if you look at the $69,000 high, you probably look a year out, 12, maybe 14 months out. And I think that's where you'll bottom out. And then you'll probably stay there for quite some time as you chop sideways. So again, I even think it could go below 20,000 if we do get a major stock market collapse as well. But again, I think at this point, 20,000 or just sub is probably the right target for me to go with it for now anyway.
What's going on with Bitcoin versus inflation?
Yeah, so Bitcoin obviously being, in the scheme of assets, even though it is now 13 years old, it's still a very new asset and it's still run by hype, right? So eventually it will start to behave more and more like gold, being an inflation hedge, but you have too much kind of pumping going on in the cryptocurrency sector. And that's why you're seeing these wild moves that aren't going along with the idea of inflation is high, therefore Bitcoin should be going up. You have to kind of wash that out. You have to see the asset become much more widely traded amongst institutions and really held amongst many people around the globe, just like gold is. And then you should finally see it. But it's too hyped right now. It has too many smaller investors whipping it around. And really, even the whales, I mean, there's a certain amount, a small group that control a huge amount of Bitcoin out there.
Okay, when you say pumping, do you think there's too many cheerleaders out there calling these extravagant forecasts that are doing more harm than good?
Yeah, I mean, it happens in every asset, right? And when assets are popular, you see this kind of pumping where people go on Twitter and you'll just see people calling for crazy price targets. I mean, I still remember when we were at that 65, 70,000 range, is you had, it was going to hit 100 by November. And then maybe, these crazy price targets were getting thrown out there. So I think at this point, you have to just understand that that's part of it. As an individual investor, you have to recognize that, right? You have to say, okay, this is a little insane. I'm not going to chase it up here. I'm going to wait for it to pull back. Yeah, let's take a look at Solana here. So Solana right now is trading just off of key support, right? So if you connect these short-term levels on it, and let me just erase these other lines, what you can see is if you connect this pivot low to this pivot low, it looks like it's kind of hammering on that support line. So Solana to me is near support. I think it might have one more little push up, maybe back to 160 or so. But I do worry that at some point it is going to break this trend line. And once it breaks that trend line, then you start to head lower. And you're talking probably down to about the $80 level. Now, I know that's shocking for a lot of people. It's not going to happen overnight. But if this line breaks, there's no major support on the way down until you get to about $80. Then once you're at 80, there's significant support there.
Is there one crypto that you're tracking that you think might have the biggest move to the upside?
I mean, for the most part, I'm a fan of Bitcoin, even though I'm not buying at these points. But I really, at this point, because I do believe you're into a point where you're going to see some sort of crypto winter, where you're going to see a lot of the cryptos get wiped out, and literally you'll see them go to zero and not recover. I'm sticking with the top like 10, 15, 20 of the cryptocurrencies by market cap, and I just really want to just spread my money out. I'm not smart enough to know a lot of the inner digital workings and the technology that, there's a lot of people out there that know more about that than me. That's where you would probably be like, okay, well, this is a unique technology in this crypto, so I'm going to put a little bit of money to work there, but I'm not really good enough at that to know that.
And I appreciate your humbleness there. Can we bring up Cardano for the folks?
Cardano definitely is one. It's actually performed really well recently. It really well. You've had this big move up just recently here. Notice where it stopped, right? So if we look at the chart here, it stopped right on this trend line. So you can see the previous pivot high right there. So that is resistance. It's around 163 to 164, $1.63, $1.64. It looks to me like maybe you could start to form an inverse head and shoulders here, which is a bullish setup. So the inverse head and shoulders here would be your shoulder, your left shoulder here would be your head. And then if you could pull back, let's say to about $1.20 and then see a move up, this now becomes a major breakout line right here, where if you can get a breakout, this could easily trade up to about $2.40, which is the next big resistance right there. So listen, I mean, we're skipping a lot of steps ahead here. It still has to form this right shoulder, but at least it has the potential with the 2/3 of the pattern already forming to potentially create that.
Okay, one more before we move on. Let's get Ethereum in there. If not, I know I'd get a lot of.
Yeah, so Ethereum here. So Ethereum's interesting for sure. One of the things that I'm kind of looking for is further downside on Ethereum. I have a major trend line that I'm actually going to play as a swing trade if it gets there. It's right around 2,800, so it's not that far away. You can see that if you connect the beginning of this bigger move to the lowest point right here, that is a general price target for a decent bounce. So this would be one where I would actually be looking at it over the next week or so and expecting that if we could get one more flush in the crypto market in the near term, you could hit this level and actually buy it. And I think off of this level, you at least could make 10 to 20%.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much, much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.